Woody's Boneheads of the Day.
Ah, yes. Boneheadedness needs to be celebrated, right? At least laughed at. We start with a story this morning where I don't know that we've ever started before. Our 49th state, the great state of Alaska. 3 days before the filing deadline, Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan learned of an 11th hour Republican challenger in his high-stakes re-election race. Dan Sullivan learned he'd be going up against Daniel J. Sullivan.
This is serious stuff. When people are going, oh, there's two Dan Sullivans, isn't that funny? No, it's cheating. And his whole purpose of running is to confuse Alaskans, make them think, Alaskan voters, that somehow he's me. Then, when he filed his campaign logo, his letterhead, his website, all had my campaign logo that I've had for 13 years.
The two-term Republican incumbent said the GOP Senate campaign arm is raising major alarms about the same name rival that they believe is being funded by his Democratic challenger. An investigation is underway after very crafty thieves made off with a mind-boggling amount of bourbon in broad daylight. Here's the COO of Apogee 21 Holdings, Bob Cook.
It seemed like an organized group of criminals deceived one of our warehouse locations by getting them to load up about 11,000 bottles of bourbon into their vehicles, that being a semi-trailer, and made off with a whole ton of bourbon.
Cook says more than 10,000 bottles got stolen from their Philadelphia warehouse, and he highly suspects they're going to be trying to sell it off to unauthorized channels, secondary wholesales, online marketplaces, etc. And finally this morning, a story from not so far away, Willard, Ohio, where a dude had to go dumpster diving when he realized he'd accidentally thrown away his scratch-off ticket valued at $100,000. How many times have you heard that story? The man told the Ohio Lottery he panicked when he realized the bingo 25 times 25 ticket that he bought in Willard had accidentally wound up in the trash. So he did what anybody would do. Yep, he went dumpster diving, and lo and behold, he found it. Smelly way to win $100,000, but it's $100,000, right? So if you're like me, you may watch stuff on TV entirely different than your spouse. Risa watches a lot of these game shows on TV and, of course, those Real Housewives of wherever drivel. But yesterday, I sat down and watched something with her. It was pretty entertaining. It was a game show where they pitted actually a group of young Air Force women, very attractive ladies, by the way, and like 5 really buff Marines, and they were talking about phrases, and you had to determine which ones were written wrong and which ones were right. And lo and behold, last night, and maybe it was because of this game show on Reddit, I saw this same list. Phrases that many of us have been saying wrong for years. Whether people notice or not, I don't know, but I pulled out a few of my favorites. So most of us know that a wheelbarrow is something you put stuff in, working around the house, right? But one guy thought it wasn't wheelbarrow. He said, I've been saying wheelbarrows for my whole life. Then another said, instead of play it by ear, he said play it by year, and I suppose one could do that, but the expressions play it by ear. Another got confused with bonfire. He said, I've been using bomb, B-O-M-B, fire, and I suppose that would cause a fire. The other that cracked me up was when your kids won't get out of bed, especially now in the summer, you say, come on, up and at 'em. One guy said, up and at 'em, A-D-A-M is what I've been saying my whole life. Another said, I was in my 30s when I realized that what I should have been saying, cease and desist, not what I was saying, cease and assist. Another said, my brother thought the people that lived beside us were our next door neighbors. Instead of next door neighbors. Brother might not have been very bright. And this one also, to me, was kind of hard to believe, but instead of saying, might as well, one dude thought he said, minus swell.